everyone, my name is Laura and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a breakdown of my process for the Olivia Rodrigo animated lyric video that I did to the song Get Him Back that I posted on this channel back in July. A lot of people were asking questions like how long it took and what sort of programs I used, so hopefully this will answer those questions and any other questions you might have had about the video. Let's get started. So the first step in creating this video was the creative ideation phase of the video, where I was just sketching out ideas and coming up with rough designs and stuff like that. So I started the video in October and I finished it in July. October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, July. So 10 months. That's kind of a while. It was like a 10-month, but not like all the time. Like definitely there were times, weeks where I didn't work on it much, and then weeks where I would work on it a ton. Like it definitely varied. And I was listening to the song in October of a year ago. My first thought when I was listening to it was, wow, like this just sounds like an angsty teen girl's diary entry. Like exactly. Like this is what I sound like when I'm writing in my journal. And I'm a big journaler myself. As you can see here, I'm just gonna pull up a little picture from my own journal. Like I love to write angrily, song lyrics, scribble things in, draw little sketches, all sorts of stuff. And I'm not a teenage girl, but I was one once, and I started doing this when I was 12. So I thought it was very equipped to create the teen girl journal aesthetic in the form of a video. So I'm just gonna pull up on my iPad some preliminary sketches and storyboards to show you kind of the first things that I drew when coming up with the ideas for this video.
It starts very rough, just scribbling out ideas, the friends, like writing. I was listening to the song. I usually listen to the song on repeat while I'm doing this to really get in the zone. I roughed out this journal here and did some sort of rough ideas. Obviously, as you can see, a lot of this didn't really make it into the video, but it helped me set the tone for what I was going for. And here's I knew I wanted to do a therapist scene. I really relate to this line because I also have a therapist parent as well. And yeah, so this is my rough sketches. So then I created this rough storyboard using the Animation Assist tool, which is this, you select this on and off in Procreate and it creates a timeline for you here where you can swipe through different frames, and each frame is its own layer group. So you can create frames by adding different layers to each group. So I did disappointed friends, they're gonna shake their head or roll their eyes, and just coming up with ideas. This was a font I found on the internet. I was like, maybe I'll use a pre-made font for this, but then I ultimately decided to handwrite everything myself just because I thought it gave me a little more flexibility and kind of added more to the journal-y feel of everything. After those really rough preliminary sketches, I moved on to creating the journal asset and starting to create the journal actually that I was going to use and figuring out exactly what it was going to look like. Like here I had this sort of rough, this is what it's going to look like on the screen, stuff like that. And then I created a storyboard for the chorus, which I believe is this layer here. So just as you can see, it's rougher than what is actually in the video, but I started to really refine what each thing was going to be so that I could draw on top of it later.
So after doing those preliminary sketches, the next step was to really iron out the video style. I kind of wanted to try something new, sort of differentiate this video from other work I've done in the past. And if you've ever seen my previous videos or drawings that I've made, I tend to do a very illustrative style, and I didn't really want to do that for this video. And I was coming off of a fellowship for Business Insider where I worked on their graphics for their show So Expensive. And if you've ever seen those, they use a very photo collage style using real photo textures from Getty Images. So I really kind of wanted to incorporate that into my personal work. I also thought it would be really cool to kind of incorporate a stop motion look to this video. I think a lot of these journal style lyric videos do that, where they kind of make it look sort of real, like it's a real journal and things are moving in and out of the page. I was sort of referencing the Taylor Swift lyric video for Eyes Open, which I'll pop up on screen here, a little example just to show you one of my references that I was looking at, as well as other journal lyric videos. Obviously, Olivia herself has a journal-y style to some of her lyric videos, like the original, I think for Sour, I forget what song it was, maybe it was a Driver's License, but yeah, here we'll show you that. Yeah, so I was kind of okay, that's kind of the style that I was going for, was stop motion-y, photo textures, but also I wanted a sketchy 2D graphic-y style for the animations in the journal, sort of like a teen girl's journal has come to life. her little sketches are coming to life on the page. So I started creating some of the assets for the video, like the journal, the background, and the little pictures that come in and out that aren't just the animations, like the gel pen animations, but more just like the things on the side, like the hearts and the sequins and the glitter and the key ring. So I'm going to show you the key ring just because I think that's a good example of showing you how the different layers kind of all come together to create the animation in After Effects. So I'm going to pull up the key ring on my iPad right now and show you how that works.
So I'm just going to break this down for you guys. I got this image of this key from, I'm trying to remember, I think it was from Adobe Stock. So it's just a picture of a key. I think this was the original image of the key from Adobe Stock. So I couldn't use this in the video because, well, I did, but I can't use just this image because I wanted it to swing into the video. And this is just one static image. There's no swinging it can do. Also this yellow, I didn't think it looked good. So I edited it a lot and I broke it up into layers that can then be animated into After Effects. First, we have the back layer. This is the back ring and it goes below this. So it's the bottom layer. And then we have the top ring here, which goes on top, the key, and then the key ring on top of all that. So as you can see, the layers are all named. And then when I bring it into After Effects, I can rig it all together. All right, so now that I've shown you the key ring in Procreate, I'm going to pull it up in After Effects to show you how I then animated it. So this is the key ring full folder in After Effects, and you can see here the motion of it swinging into place. So ring A is this ring here, ring B is this ring here, keychain, key. Those are all the layers, and then I also have the I wanna text layers that I brought into here as well. So you can see ring A top is the topmost layer, and I'll just turn it off and on so you can see. And parented to it is ring A bottom, which is the back part of that key ring. So parented is just like this part here, parent and link. So if you go through this list, I clicked ring A top from the ring A bottom layer, go up to here. That means that anytime I do anything to ring A top, it will bring that layer with it. And it also brings the key layer because the key layer, which is right below it, is parented to ring A top, which you just do by going like that. So there it is. And there is all this stuff moving together. And then ring B, which is this ring here, is what I named it, is right below that. And if I move it, all this stuff comes with it. And ring B bottom is all the way at the bottom here, right above ring A bottom. And it is parented to ring B top. So if I rotate this, all this comes. And then there's the keychain layer, which ring B top is parented to, keychain layer. So here's the keychain, and if I rotate it, all this stuff comes. So this is kind of the master control layer. So this is what I animated the position of the key ring on because I wanted everything to come at the same time with the position because I wanted the position, like the whole thing to move all at once. So the position, so the keyframes are these little hourglass shapes. So there's one set here, then I moved it this way. And so everything comes along with it. And then for the rotation, I have it set at different rotations for the different parts of the key so that it can kind of create this swinging motion. So you might notice like the key is kind of at a different point in the rotation than the ring because it's all kind of going in a chain. So that's why you got this like stepladder effect of the keyframes. And another thing I'll show you is if I hover over the position keyframes here and select the two of them and click this little graph, this is the speed graph. So this is like a little graph that you can manipulate to change the speed of the animation. So you just click these little points and you can edit it like that. And that will, so when it's like going up, it gets faster and then slower, the motion. And these are also represented by these little dots as well in the motion. So each dot represents a keyframe on this line. And that can help you get the exact motion time to the song the way you want it. And then if I'm going to go to this bridge right here, just going to show you how then I plopped it right into the journal on top, and it's loading really slowly because all these things are moving. And so the program is really bogged down, but yeah, you just put the composition in. Let's see if I can find it. Keyframe full right here. Turn it off and on so you can see that now it's on top. And I also added a shadow to it as well. If I go click this down here, layer styles, drop shadow. So that helped kind of blend it into the journal. Yeah, that's an example of one of the photo assets. And these are all different photo assets that I used. The hearts and the gel pens and the stick or the sequins and even the glitter in the background. All of those are kind of done in a similar manner to this.
So I thought it'd be cool for this process video to walk you guys through step by step the creation of like one line of this song. Because that's kind of how I did it. I didn't really do it in order or anything. The reason I kind of like lyric videos is because it kind of creates a natural separation. So I'll do it kind of line by line, and that helps me stay motivated. Like I've completed a chorus, I've completed the bridge. Like I got to keep going, kind of situation. Like I don't do like storyboards for the whole thing and then graphics for the whole thing. Like I break it up into sections, which helps me stay motivated and stay on task and stuff. So basically, since I've already animated the whole song, I decided that for this process video, I would show you kind of the creation of the intro slide for this video, the whole thing that said like "Getting Back," animated lyric video. Yeah, so that's what I'm gonna do. So we're gonna start with preliminary sketches for that on my iPad.
So this is what I've roughed out for the introductory slide to this video. So when I was starting each section of this project, I would start with this base that I made, the journal base that I created, and then I have this background color here. It's not the textured paper background from the actual video, but it's roughly the same color. As you might know, if you've studied any color theory at all, colors drastically will change depending on what colors are around them. They look very different. Then up here, I have my color palette for what I used, the rough colors of the gel pens, which later on they kind of change because, well, you'll see, but I end up clipping a texture onto them, so it changes it, but this is just sort of when I'm roughing it out. So then I'll draw my ideas. So I already drew this here. This is what I'm gonna do. So Getting Back, animated lyric process video by Laura Lily, which is my YouTube channel name. So now I'm going to actually trace over this, make it cleaner, add different colors, different ideas, and make everything onto its own layer, because After Effects, it's way easier to animate things if they're all separated into layers. It can tell what the layers were, and if you separate everything correctly, you can then animate each thing individually. So I'm going to click the plus button, and I'm going to not have it on animation mode anymore because I'm not animating right now. Going to make this opacity really low, and I'm going to name my layers. Always name your layers, and I'm going to name this Get. So that is the first I'm going to do. And then I'm going to trace over the G, which I'm going to do off camera because it's going to take a while. But I will see you guys again when I get to the next step. All right, so it has been a while. It's been a while. But I have filled in the letters, traced over them, and something I want to note is that I traced over them twice. So, and I also added these little squiggly lines, but if you see here, like I did it 2 times. That way it can create this little line boil effect, and well, later in the program, I'll show you how I edit it to make this easier to do, but basically every single asset, like we have get 1 over here. This is like the purple outline, and then get 2 in the second frame. So everything was drawn 2 times, and I added these little hearts, and yeah, everything is on its own layer pretty much, like each word, and then the animated lyric video process is on its own layer, by Laura Lily is on its own layer, and all the hearts are on their own layer. So all these things can be moved independently of each other. So the next step is to add the glitter texture, which I have put here, the 2 different colors that I want to do. So because I want it to look like a gel pen, I found this like sparkle texture on, I think it was Pexels, and so I recolored it for each color. So this is the pink one and this is the purple one. So what we do is we take the purple, just drag it to where we want it. So I'm going to go down to the bottom layer. We have Get 1. Resize it to be a little bit more close to the size of the text. And then you click, so you tap on the inserted image and you click clipping mask, and that clips it to the text below. And then I would put this in multiply. That way we can kind of see through, like more like an actual gel pen. when it's in multiply mode. And then I'll do the same thing with the pink texture. Turn that on, drag it down, put it over the pink part of the get, put this in a multiply layer, and then drag it over and clip that on. And now we have this final, what I would use for the video. Another thing, just quickly to add, is that, you know, the whole dragging it down and everything is a lot of, you know, it's kind of time consuming. So the next part would be a little bit easier because all I do is I will just duplicate the texture, bring it up, drag it over the next word, and clip it on. So that saves me a lot of time. Once I have it sort of in the right place, I then just go up letter by letter and do each one. Takes me not as long as like re-pasting in the texture each time. So it's a pretty quick workflow. I'm gonna do the back as just one layer. But when I'm in the program, I'm gonna show you how I separate out the letters anyway, because I think I'm visualizing it in my head and I wanna have each letter kind of like pop up in sequence. I think that'd be cool, but I don't feel like doing like B1, B2, A1, A2, like it's gonna be so much more work. So I'm gonna just do it as one now, and then I'll show you in the program how I can kind of divide it up using the puppet pin tool. So then what I would do in this situation is merge all these layers together so that this is just one asset to use. Like I can manipulate it in the program as just one thing, and that's a little bit easier for me because I know I'm not gonna be changing this anymore, so it's fine. So I'm just gonna do that quickly for everything, and then I will show you what the next step of the process is. So I have filled in the textures for each of the layers and merged them together. So we just have get him back, animated lyric process, whatever, that whole thing, and on for each frame. So the next step in the process is to take these out of their groups. Now, I don't know if there's a way to do this fast, but if there is, I don't know it. So I just will literally drag it out of the group because After Effects is gonna make it, it's gonna be way easier if they're not grouped like this. So basically the reason to do this is when they're in the groups, After Effects will import this group one as a big folder, which is not what I want. I want each of these layers to be grouped into folders with their partner layer. So I want the two gets to be grouped together and each heart to be with its own partner. So just to make that easier, I'm gonna put it in order now so that I don't have to do that when I'm in the program. So I'm just gonna take everything out of its folder now that it's like, now we already have everything set up. So just dragging it out. And we can delete this layer because this is just the rough ideation layer. Delete the two groups. Now what we do is just drag everything in order. So we have heart C, which goes with heart C2. So we just put them next to each other. Heart B goes with heart B01. Heart A with, and you know, down the line. So the two gets. That way, when we bring this into After Effects, all the layers are going to be right next to their partner layers so that we can easily group them together there, and it will be pretty quick once we get into the program. So yeah, now it's all ready. I will delete the bottom layer of the journal because we don't need that. In After Effects, we already have that in there. And then I'll just silence the background layer. So now we just have each word on its own layer right next to its partner layer. Okay, so the next step, I've already named this file. I named it Process Vid Example, just to keep everything organized, is we click the toolbar and we click Share. So we want to click PSD because the PSDs are going to import as layers into After Effects. And I will upload it to my drive, or I might airdrop it to my computer. So the next step you will see is in After Effects. All right, so now I'm going to show you the process of bringing those words that we just drew in Procreate into Adobe After Effects. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a new composition. So you click Composition, New Composition. And I like to make it pretty big. Sometimes I did, I think 2000 by 2000. Make it kind of a big square. And I'm gonna name this Get Him Back, so GHB Process Video Introduction Text. Or no, we'll just call it that. And the frame rate is not 60, 24. So, okay. Here's our new composition right here. As you can see, it is blank. So what are we gonna put in it? Let's see. The journal. So we'll put the journal in right here, drag that into this panel here, and resize it to be 53. And here's the journal. And now we're gonna put the background in. So the background is, I already made it obviously because I already made the video, but it's this square here. So I'm just gonna click Control C and paste it in, put it on the bottom, and resize it. It doesn't have to be exact, but I'll resize it here so that it's showing the bottom. Let's see what the scale is here. I had it at 70. Okay, cool. So the background, for the pink background, which is in basically the entirety of the video, it's basically just a looping effect. And if I click in here, you can see it's just kind of images of this pink texture held for 6 frames or so. And I think I had like 2 different images, and then sometimes I would flip them to create like this like sort of motion between the different ones, like flickering back and forth in the background. So now that I have these 2 layers in, the next step is to import the text. So I'll click File, Import, File, and look through my folders here, trying to find it. Here it is. I am Process Video Example Copy, and I import as Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. The reason it's a copy is because I already filmed this once and messed up, so I made a new version of it. So Composition, Retain Layer Sizes. Okay. So click here, and here are all the text layers laid out for us the way that I made them. So get 1, get 2, back 1, back 2, etc. up until the hearts. So what's the next step? The next step is to group together each layer of the gets and the hymns and all these things into groups. But first we want to make them kind of oscillate between each other like it does in the video. So you want, the whole reason I did the two different ones is so that it would flicker between the 2 gets to create that sort of flickering effect that's in the video. So here's just a random piece of text from the original video, and I'm just going to show you how if I click the T on my keyboard, this is the opacity. So this represents how see-through the layer is. And I created these keyframes so that I would oscillate the opacity of the 2 layers of the text so that when one's visible, the other's not, and vice versa. So that makes them kind of flicker. Just going to zoom in so you can really hopefully see this. But you can see if I go back and forth, it goes back and forth between the 2, creating this flickering effect. So basically each keyframe, like this one is at 0 opacity, this is at 100, next keyframe 0 and 100, and I believe it's every 6 keyframes that it switches. So since I already made this, once I made it once, I didn't have a reason to make it again. So I just copy, Control C, all these keyframes, go back to the example composition here, and I'm gonna click all these things, hit T, so show all the opacities, and then I'm just gonna paste it in. So click, and I'm probably gonna make it a little bit more than this. Right, well, I won't need more than 14 seconds. So click, and then I'm just gonna put that one onto each one that says 1. So back 1, and I'm gonna switch these, and 1, him 1. This is wrong, but whatever. Put it onto each one. Done. Then go back to this and highlight the other one. Click Control C. So that's the sort of vice versa one. And put that onto each of the other versions of it. So that will make it so that the 2 switch back and forth from each other. And now I'm just going to play it back to check my work. It looks like everything is working well. If I'd done it wrong, then something would be disappearing completely or something if I like pasted it on the wrong layer or something. So everything's good. Next step is to group the two gets together into one layer so that it just makes things easier to work with. So highlight the two, click on my key or right click, and then pre-compose. So that just makes it get into one. I'm going to name it get and click OK. And now they're grouped into one layer right here. And I'm going to do that for all the layers. All right, so now that I've done that for each layer, everything is paired with its like sort of twin layer to create this flickering effect. Next step is to paste them into the journal that we made. So just going to highlight all of the layers here, click Control C, and put them on top of the journal. So I highlighted all these layers, parented them to the journal layer. So that means the journal is in charge. It's like the top dog. Anything I do to this layer will affect the other layers I have parented it. And this is where you can select it or you can move this little whip here. So here are our main characters of properties. So the way that After Effects works is basically you manipulate properties in time and that creates the animation. So you have anchor point, position, scale, rotation, and opacity. Those are our main, how many are there? Main 5. So the anchor point is where the animation happens from. So if you put it in the middle and then you move the scale, it'll scale from the middle. But if you put the anchor point at the bottom and you scale, it scales from the bottom. And that's also true of rotation. If you put it at the bottom, it'll rotate from the bottom. Not really true of opacity because the opacity just affects the whole layer. Doesn't matter where the anchor point is for that. So we want it to be in the middle right now because we want the animation to happen from the middle. So we're going to plop it in there. Now we're going to start actually animating the layers we have. So we have the get layer. So we want the anchor point to be in the middle of the word because we want to just have it pop in from the middle. And I'm thinking that for this, it would be cool if it's like kind of pops up and then falls down a little bit. And then I'm going to put him above back, put this in order just so that it makes more sense. We're going to put the anchor point in the middle here. For the back, we'll put that in the middle. And we'll just do that for each of the text layers. Then I have my 3 hearts. So this is heart A. So I want the hearts to kind of rotate back and forth. So I'm going to put it in the middle and we're going to have them be like rotating a little bit. Heart 2 or heart B and heart C. All right, so everything's set up and now we're going to start the animation. So I wanted this video to have a stop motion-y vibe to it, so I used a lot of just hold frames. So we want position. So when you first start animating, you think like, what properties do I want to manipulate right now? So position, rotation. We're not going to do scale for this one. Let's get rid of scale because we don't really need scale. Position, rotation. Okay, that's it. And to get just those, you click Shift, R, and P on your keyboard. So stopwatch is basically what creates the keyframe. So if you click position, stopwatch, it creates this little diamond. The diamond is a keyframe. If you hover forward in the timeline, this represents like 1 second forward. You move it, then it creates another keyframe, and then you click the space bar, it'll play back for you what you just did. Now, obviously that's not what we want, but we know this is our ending position for everything, basically. But we're just going to do it layer by layer, just so that we can be focused on what we want. I'm just going to also click end and trim this composition to work area here. So we're hyper focused on just where we are now. So we want it to end up here. But what do we want in the past before it's here? We want the rotation and the position to be here in one spot. And then we want it to be maybe a little bit above and maybe the rotation a little bit up. And then it'll come in from the bottom. So we'll bring it down and it'll be rotated the other way to create some nice motion of it going like popping in like that. Maybe even a little higher and a little bit more. And then you click Easy Ease. That makes the keyframes a lot smoother. And that looks pretty good. Not amazing, but okay. I think it'll maybe be a little less time here. And this is the first thing that's going to happen, so we can just almost put it all the way at the beginning. Get. And normally I would be timing this to music, which would help a lot with the timing for me. So you might be like, well, that looks stupid. It's just like randomly appearing from there. Well, first of all, there's going to be nothing else on screen yet. But if we move it, it'll just make it so it doesn't appear till like it'll be like that. And this is like the visibility of the layer when we drag this back and forth. And I am a little rusty. I've worked on other projects, but I haven't worked on this video in a couple months. So I think that's kind of right. And then what I might do for this video specifically is turn these into hold keyframes. So that means that it'll just appear on that one frame. I think I will put one more keyframe here and then hold this out, just because I really wanted this video to have a choppy look to it, so I didn't really need all of the frames. Maybe I will make this even higher. Oh, and then what I might do is create another frame here that's like a little bit down and a little bit rotated the other way, so then it's like popping back into place. And then lower this, move it like that, turn these back into holds, and then give this a little more time. That looks good. I think it might be, maybe we want this to be a little longer. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that looks good. I mean, this isn't it's not an exact science, it's just kind of what looks good to me. So now we have the get, and then we'll just do the next layer, go to the him, and you kind of just figure it out like as you go. Position, rotation. So we want this to come in after, so we're gonna slide this forward. Oh, that would be good, but not that, maybe like over here. I also want to make sure that the line foil is lined up with the other ones. So sometimes I would just move it like this, that way it doesn't actually move the layer, it just moves the visibility. All right, so move these forward, drag this down, rotate it like this way, so it'll come in kind of from the opposite way, and then create. So one big property of animation, if you guys are not familiar with any animation, is you want to always overshoot things a little bit and then have it go back. And that creates a lot of like more fluid looking, nice animation. So it's overshooting and then it comes back down. But we're gonna have it overshoot a little more. Why not? And then it's nice to have it settle into the motion. So I'll copy these layers over here. And then to settle in, we'll make it go down a little bit more than it's supposed to, rotate this way a little more than it's supposed to, and then it'll go back into place. And that is kind of what creates a really nice movement to it. Although that looked a little weird, but you kind of just play around with it till it looks good. I think it's overshooting too much. So we'll do this, we'll make it like -2 instead of -5. And maybe it's going down too much. You want it to be subtle, you don't want to be crazy. And maybe this is too fast. When you want to easy ease, which doesn't matter quite as much since we're going to turn these into holds, but I think it helps me make sure the motion looks good before I hold everything. That looks pretty good. And then I will just toggle hold keyframe. And then I don't want this to appear until it starts to move, so I'm going to put it there. I'll put this here. And yeah, now we have get him back, get him appearing. Okay, so for the back, I kind of decided I want to move this by letters, but I can't do that right now because it's just one layer. So if I try to move just the B, click on that, it just moves the whole thing. How do we figure that out? How do we do that? There is a way. Click the puppet pin tool, which is this little thumbtack here. You can highlight over the position tool should work. Click there. And now we've created this pin where we can just move the B. So we will click on each letter and put a little pin there. Now, unfortunately, for the exclamation point, we're going to have to do 2 pins. I wonder if there's a way we can connect them. That's okay. We'll just animate the same stuff. So that created these meshes. So we can twirl these down and we can animate their properties independently of each other. So that was kind of a quick fix for when I didn't feel like doing each letter on its own layer, but I wanted them to animate separately. So we will move this in here. And what I want is each letter to pop up individually, kind of like in maybe like sequence of each other. So to deform, you click deform. That's how you change the meshes. This is our first keyframe on here that we've created. Puppet pin 1. And I could rename this if I wanted, like, what is mesh 6? So it's the heart. And I can rename, I mean, I don't always do this, but it's good to name things, you know, just so you know what's going on. Here we have the position we can move. So we'll go back in time and we'll move this down, down, move all of them down so that they're just in a line, but below where they're going to end up. And now, so actually you might think like every ladder, like that's going to take a while, but it really doesn't because we're just doing them all at once, basically. And then they pop up together. That's not what I want it to look like, but it's a good start. So we want it to be pretty quick. So we're just going to move, you highlight all these keyframes here, drag them in. So now it's a lot faster. It's hard when you have a lot of layers to like grab everything you want. Oh, also we're not affecting all of them. So make sure you have everything twirled down the way you want. Highlight these 3, move them in. And I'm going to highlight over them and put them onto an easy ease layer or easy ease settings. Drag that back down, back. But as I said, it's nice to have things overshoot. So we're going to go over here. We're going to click position keyframe. Everything's going to get a new keyframe that's in the same spot. Go back in time. And then on this layer, we're going to drag everyone up a little bit more than we want it to be. That way it will overshoot a tiny bit. And let's check how that looks. Back. And I think it's coming in a little too slow, so I'm gonna put that in there. Or maybe it's just not down enough here. It's a lot of trial and error. I think it needs to be more down. And sometimes what I'll do when like the letters end up curved a little bit is I'll put some of them even more low, so it's kind of like curved the opposite way. I don't know why, I kind of just think that looks good. Let's see. I think it needs to overshoot a little more. I think it's not enough. It's a lot of like playing back, being like, not yet. Okay, that's kind of good. Sort of what I want. And it's not going to start moving, or we're not going to have it appear till then. We don't want this to happen. This is like a tangent here. Usually I try to avoid that. So hopefully that is not going to happen because we're going to make these all holds anyway. So that's good. It just looks messy, I think. Also, we're going to retime all this anyway. So then what I would do next is hover over all of these, make it a hold layer. Why is that not working? Hold keyframes. See how that looks. I think we need one more like frame in between. So I might do like a little bit, move this way. So I'm gonna move all of these over. And it's good to have more, like kind of you want to ease into motion. So I might say like we have this is our first layer. First keyframe, then second keyframe here. So maybe I'll put a keyframe here, then like go over all these and then turn those into holds. Except that it didn't work for all of them. Make sure each of them got a keyframe. Okay. And then toggle hold keyframe. Okay. Let's see how that looks. I still feel maybe we need this to be held one frame longer for the overshoot. I just feel like it happens too quickly. Okay. Okay. That looks nice. So let's just, I feel like the C, I don't know why. I feel like I want them to be more spread out here. So I'm just gonna like spread them out a little bit. So now what I want to do is I want to offset them because I wanted each letter to come in on its own. That was the whole reason that I separated all the layers out. So we're just going to drag through these keyframes and then just literally move each one over so that it'll all come in on its own. Now I'm like, this is going to look weird. Hopefully it doesn't. Yeah. Get him back like that. There we go. That looks pretty good. Now I'm gonna just go through, make sure there's no weird tangents. Doesn't look like there is. And now we go to the next layer. So this is the animated lyric video process. So for these like sort of just text stuff, what I would usually do is create a mask over it. So flip the square, or I'll use the pen tool, and I'll just create a bunch of points there. Go hover over masks, mask 1. And the mask layer, we can make it so we can't see anything underneath it. We're gonna click inverted. So this text is still there. It's just being hidden by this mask. So we click mask path. And then we kind of make each, after back comes on, we'll make each thing come on, or each word come on one by one. So make it a hold. And then look after one frame, animated will come on. So we just move these points to show each piece of text as it comes on. And we'll have it kind of be like maybe every other. Lyric comes on, go forward 2 frames. Video comes on, 2 frames forward, process. Now let's see how that looks. Nice. And maybe we want it to come on like slower at the beginning and then faster in the middle, which is kind of one of the basic principles of animation. You sort of want your motion to like ease into itself. So, you know, the lyric video comes on just really quick and then process comes on, brain later, and nice. And then Laura Lily, we're gonna do the same thing. And no, you know what? I'm gonna do it differently for this one. I think I'll move this keyframe here. So now I'm kind of like, you know what? I want these to come on at separate times, but they're just one layer, which is too bad. Maybe I should have separated them when I was drawing, but it's not too late. What we'll do is we'll just create a mask over by, and we're gonna just rename this layer by. And then I'm gonna duplicate by Control D. Now we're gonna rename this Laura. And then we'll just move the mask so that it just shows my name. That way we've kind of just did like a makeshift, like we have two layers now. And you know, maybe it would have been better if we had separated them before, but we didn't think to do that. And so that's the good thing about this program is there's usually workarounds for stuff if you didn't think to have the foresight to do, like with the letters here or this here. Like there's ways. It's always better if you can think ahead, but if you can't, no big deal. Or a lot of it is you come up with ideas on the fly. So, because you know, motion design or motion graphics and animation, it's very responsive to like the music, and you kind of come up with very creative. You come up with ideas as you go. So it's always good to have flexibility built into the program, which is something I really like about After Effects. So we'll bring this down. I want it to kind of pop in sideways, come up. Like that. And we'll just turn these into holds. Like this needs to be one frame longer. And we'll do the same thing here. No, so I made a mistake here. I don't like that they're twisting in from the same way. I think that looks weird. So I think I'm gonna change it so that the Laura Lily is actually going from this way. And then it's gonna end this way. That way, I just think it looks better if they're kind of in different ways. We want them to be offset from each other, so this is going to be up a little bit. And we want them both to happen after lyric video process comes on. You know what? Now that I'm looking at it, I feel like it should be reversed. I'm like being so indecisive right now. Yeah, I don't like this. I think this should be coming in from the other way. So this should be rotating this way. And then going up and being this way. I don't really know my right from left super well, so I'm sorry. I'm just like saying this way and that way. And this should be going from that to this. I think that looks much better. And now everything's on screen. And the only things left to do is make the hearts move. There are a lot of ways we could do this. I basically want them to be rotating back and forth, but I want it to be slow. I don't want it to be fast. So I'm gonna pre-compose them into one layer called hearts. And I'm gonna go put a time or posterized time on them. So what this does, posterized time effect, which I used a lot during this video for stuff like the gel pens on the side and even just the whole video at the end, I think. is it changes the frame rate. So the frame rate is how many frames per second it is. And we don't want this to be 24 because we want it to be slow. So we're gonna, or not slow, but like choppy, like a stop motion. So we're gonna make it 4 frames per second. Now there's no motion on this layer right now really, so nothing's gonna happen. But we're gonna go into here and we're gonna put a wiggle rotation on it. So the wiggle rotation, if we put it on heart A, you're gonna see it just kind of randomly wiggles the rotation of this layer. And you can set your different speeds, like wiggles, how many wiggles per second you want, what degree of wiggle you want. And so this is very useful just to add some really quick and dirty motion to stuff where maybe you don't really care exactly what it's doing, but you know you want it to be doing something. And there are lots of different ways that you could use this, or you could not use it. Like sometimes I don't like that it is, I don't know how this is gonna look. Let's go over here and see how it looks. It's kind of loading slow right now, I think. The effects will slow down the speed of the playback a lot. Maybe we want it to be 6 frames per second. And then maybe I'll make the hearts appear in sequence so that they're not just like all on screen right away. And I think I'm gonna make the speed that they wiggle a little faster. And it's loading really slow, but it's kind of like good enough. This is not an exact science of motion graphics. It's just sort of, and that's kind of what I really liked about this video, is that because it was just a teen girl's journal and stuff, it didn't have to be perfect. It sort of was allowed to be messy, and that kind of made a lot less pressure on the video. I think the hearts should maybe appear with the by Laura Lily, so I'm gonna move all of this over so that they kind of come in at this time. And then everything's on screen. We're gonna click end here and we're just gonna play this back and see how it looks. It's not playing back totally in real time because it's a lot for the computer to load, but it gives us a sense of what it'll look like. And then once it's finished kind of rendering it once, we can usually play it back actually in real time. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So then I want to animate the actual journal. So since everything's on the journal, all kind of laid out the way I want it, for now, might change things around later. You might have noticed in the video that the journal rotates back and forth and it's kind of at a slight angle, just to give it a little bit more fun flair to it. So the journal, the journal layer is here. If I go to R, I can see I had it at -3.5 rotation. -3.5 rotation. So I'm gonna go and put that on here just so that it's the same as it was in the video. Give you guys the full effect of how this would work. See, that looks weird to me. Why? I'm gonna trust it. We'll see what happens. So you see I have this layer called null 1. So what this is a null object layer, which is basically like an invisible layer that doesn't do anything other, well, it does stuff, but it doesn't show up. It doesn't render out. So you don't see this when I render out the video. I'm gonna copy this and just paste it here. So we get my null 1. And I'm gonna move it to the middle of the journal. Because what I'm gonna do is the null is gonna become the parent for the journal. Because that way you can parent multiple things to a null layer, you can change things around. The reason I did it this way also was so I could test out the journal movement, and then I would just unparent it, and then I could straighten it back out and move the text, because it was way easier to animate the text on something that wasn't moving. So that's why I did it this way. And so yeah, the null just adds a lot more flexibility. So it's always good to animate with a null if you know you're going to be changing things around a lot and you don't You want to be able to kind of quickly undo and redo stuff. So for this note, I've set these rotation keyframes so that it will rotate kind of on a 6-frame schedule. Every frame it will kind of do a different rotation, just slight back and forth. And then I have an expression. This is like, if you click this Alt on the stopwatch, you can then go in here, type your little key, or type your expressions. That's in like JavaScript, I think, but I don't know that. But I know this expression is just loop out, very simple, and that will just loop these keyframes. You're like, what are the keyframes doing? Well, we'll see, because we're going to parent the journal to the null. And now it's moving back and forth, and it's just going to keep doing that. Oh, but I just realized, see, this is why it's good to have this parented to the null. I can unparent it, and the journal can just put it back to 0 for the rotation, because I realized the hearts weren't parented to it anymore. So, because when I pre-comp them, it unparented the hearts. So see, that's kind of why I did it with the null, just that way. It's really easy to keep the animation intact while also keeping the journal able to be manipulated with the text. And I think we're going to change this to -3.5. And now that is what we want. Yeah. And then I would usually animate the journal coming in from the side or up or whatever. Let's make this composition a little bigger, just so we can really get a sense of everything going on. Sometimes I would do like 3000 by 3000 for this video. We're gonna put this in a new composition. It's gonna be called Process Video Final Intro Slide. I mean, that's not really a good title, because anytime you name something final, you end up not having it be final. But whatever. It never works that way. Go to my comp process video example that we were just working in. No, not that. Now we put it in, and we can see it's now what we just did, but in this new composition. Oh, another thing I want to do, we go to this, we can see on the journal, I had, I think, a layer style of a drop shadow. So what that does is that just creates a little shadow below. So I want to just copy that. And I'll show you how you could add that, but I'm going to just use the one we already made. But what you do to add a layer style, you go right click here, layer styles, drop shadow, and then you go down to here and you can play around with these different options, like the angle it's coming in from, the opacity. You can change the blending mode, you can change the color of the shadow to whatever you want. Obviously you want it to be pretty dark color because it's a shadow. So you can change the distance. You can play around with all these effects to create the shadow that you want. But I already did that when I was making this video originally, so I did it once and then I just copied in what I already did. So I chose this kind of soft shadow over the tissue paper background. And I did this for the pens and like pretty much anything I added to the video, except for the text, because that's on the journal. It's not going to have a shadow because it's writing. So now what I've done is I added an instrumental version of Getting Back to the bottom, and I kind of selected the part of the song just by scrolling back and forth that I thought would be good for the intro. So normally what I would do for the actual video, like here for like this first part, is I would have the song at the bottom timed to where I wanted it, and I would animate to the song as I went, and then I would then in the final comp try to match it so that the song is exactly where it was in each individual composition. I'll just show you, like, This is full song. This is all, we got chorus, verse 1, verse 2, like everything lined up. You see the song is at the bottom layer, and each layer has the sound on it, but it's silenced for the final render. So there's just this one song playing, but I had the song into each composition. You can open it up. We see like this is the first verse. We go back to our full song. We can go to the chorus. Or the choruses were a little different, so I have different ones, but we go into the chorus, go to the bottom. The song is there, cropped to just the chorus of the song, and then all the animation put on top. So yeah, for this I'm going to do this instrumental, and I'm going to do position and scale as my animatable things. I'm going to just start, we want it to be like when it says getting back. So kind of like go into like, okay, when it says this, I want it to be in the center and bigger, like that. And then like lower, because I think it should like come in pretty quick when it's like boom, like. So I'm gonna get rid of this keyframe here, delete, but I still want it to be roughly in that position when it's there. So I'm gonna hover over these, and I'm gonna mess with the speed graph. So I want it to come in faster, so that when it's like that opening strum, it's on as much as it can be in the center at that point. So let's see. No, still wrong. Maybe we'll make this a little higher to start. So I like that. I think that's looking kind of good. But I want the animated lyric video to come on a little later. I think it's like weird that it starts coming on before it's on screen. So what I'll do for that, when it comes on, I'll click into this comp here, right when I want it to start coming on. And now we're inside the original comp we made. I'm gonna just twirl these down and go to that part where it's coming on. Go to the mask, move it over so that it comes on a little later. And then I'm gonna move everything else over too, because we want all the stuff to then be delayed to the part. Now that we've delayed that, we wanna make sure we delay everything else as well, or it'll look weird. So we'll just delay that. We'll delay the hearts a little bit. And now since we messed with that, we now have to make sure that the layer is starting to become visible at the right time for these ones. So we're gonna move this over here and this over here. And then we'll move the hearts so that they kind of come on at the same time as those. So let's see how that looks now. I think that's gonna be good. Now we're gonna do the scale. So you can see this is just sort of a, I mean, you know, maybe some people would have this really planned out, but that's not really my style for this video. Some videos you have to plan out more, but this was very like, because it was the same background, the same everything, I got to be kind of more chill with it, more spur of the moment as I animated. I like how the first movement is timed to the first strum, and then the second movement's going to be timed to the second strum. So it's like do 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 like that. And then for the, it's gonna like fade into the video, I think. I want this to be faster, the zoom or the scaling, which is basically a zoom. Just like that, kind of a similar thing to what we did before. So it's kind of like sort of starts fast and then tapers off. And we gotta make sure we copy that ease to the position. Copy, paste. Just make sure that worked. Yep. Why is this like that? Oh, I think I undid it somehow. I'm gonna redo this. Design. Now I want to put the pens on the side, like in the actual video. So we're gonna go into the comp and go out, and then what I do for this, I already have this set up, but I'll just show you. We'll go to the full song comp here. We'll go into the, not the chorus, I did that first, so it's got more mistakes in it. So I'm gonna go to the bridge, or the ending. This is the comp for this part. And you see I have the pens and the tape and like hearts on the side, stickers, all that. Let's put the sequence in. So here's my comp for sequence. It's called sequence 2. So basically I have posterized time on this, so that's making the frame rate 3. I don't have anything in it, but when I click into it, it's just the sequence. They're all on their own layer. I cut them out of a picture on my iPad. I have rotation set here. Is there an expression here? Oh, there's a wiggle expression. So it's, I don't totally remember what this means. 0.7, I think that's one of these is the speed and one of them is the amount it wiggles. So I'm gonna say it's probably 25 is the speed. I don't remember, but you can look it up. But that's the basic wiggle expression. So they're wiggling back and forth, and that's on every single one of these layers here. So we're just gonna copy this whole thing, sequence 2, put it into our process video example at the bottom. Right, it can go below the journal layer because some of them are below the journal, and we're just gonna move it to roughly the middle so that none of them are in a weird spot. And we're gonna make sure, yeah, I think that looks nice. So the sequins are in, and now we're gonna have the pens as well. So this says pens for last scene. So yeah, they're all together. So we're gonna copy this and we're gonna put it onto the bottom of process video, or the top of process video example. And move it over, and then I'm gonna go into that comp and show you what it looks like inside. All right, so in the pens comp, we have all the pens laid out the way we want them. They're wiggling with some sort of expression or time remap tool. They have position keyframes on them, which is telling them where to be at different parts of the thing. We're not going to use this for this, but so basically I would create a new pen comp for each of the sections. So for like the first verse, and then for each new line, I would make a new keyframe and put them into a new position, kind of based on what color was being written in the video at that time. So if it was like the text was blue, I might make it so the blue pen was closer to the journal and the green and the pink were further away. Sort of not a hard rule, but kind of like I wanted to imagine as if the girl making this journal was, you know, using the pen and then putting it down, and then taking a picture, kind of like stop motion. So the pen would be like have been moved. So that's kind of was my thought process for that. And also just I thought it like what gave the video more visual variety and stuff. So there's a rotation expression on this, wiggling it. and that's true of the hearts as well. So we're just gonna have it be in one spot for the whole time. And I think this looks good enough. Maybe I might move, let's see, we got, maybe the purple should be closer because this purple, the writing, so maybe she was just using the purple. So we're gonna put it closer to the thing. So we'll zoom into the keyframe that it is. And let's switch the yellow and the purple, or maybe we'll, yeah. You can also then click over here and see what it actually looks like. Yeah, I think the yellow and the purple should be switched because it's more of a purple centric composition. So we're gonna go into here. And actually, okay, I just realized something. We don't want to switch the yellow and the purple in this because then we're going to be actually messing with this composition, which will change things here, which I don't want because I might use this video again and I don't want to mess with this. So what we're going to do is search in this bar for pens for last scene. We're going to duplicate it and then we're going to rename it pens for process video. That way we've created a new composition. We can mess with To Our Heart's Content and it's not going to change anything at all in the composition there. So we're going to go to our process video example, get rid of this, pop this in here, move it up where we want it maybe, go in for the keyframe that we like with the pens on it, find the purple one and the yellow one. Oops. And zoom into the keyframe. And then we'll just switch them around. So we'll move the yellow. I'm gonna change the quality so that it loads faster. Yellow one here. Purple one up here. All right, I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, this is basically done now. The only thing left to do is to, well, there's a couple things, but the main thing left to do is to create an adjustment layer on top of everything. So an adjustment layer is a layer that doesn't render out, but it will, everything, all the effects we put on this layer will affect everything below it. And we're gonna do a posterized time effect. So posterized time, as I mentioned earlier, controls the frame rate. So we're gonna put that on there. And everything in this video, I set it to 12 frames per second because a lot of stop motion is filmed 12 frames per second. And that was kind of the vibe I was going for. So that will make it so that everything, all the camera movement, everything will render at 12 frames per second. And that is the step I would do. And then the next thing I want to do, which I will do for this, is, as you might remember with the actual video, go show you, there's those like camera zooms that zoom in and out. So I'll go to full song. And so for that, so some of it would be like, let's just zoom in on like one specific part. It zooms in and then switches to the next like chorus or next part of the song. And so if I had just set the scale on this composition here, it wouldn't affect this unless it was maybe parented to it or something. And I wanted to do these transitions like this. And so the way you do that is on an adjustment layer. So you have this adjustment layer that's affecting both these layers. And then you put a transform on it from the effects panel. You search transform and you drag it on. And that way I can have these keyframes of the scale and they affect everything below it. So this middle one where it's fully zoomed in is kind of right when it switches. And I'm going to do that for our process video example with whatever I decide to put next, which will probably be my own face. From maybe it'll be like this, and then it'll zoom in and out, and it'll be like me saying, "Hi guys, welcome to the video," or whatever I end up doing. So yeah, I hope I explained that well enough. I'll show you more process stuff from actually making the video, but I thought it was good to just walk through like one example of like from start to finish how one of the lines of the lyric video would have been made.
Next, I'm going to try to explain how I animated certain parts of the video that kind of deviated from just text popping onto the screen. For example, the next thing I'm going to bring up is the animated sequence in Procreate for the part where she punches him in the face in the bridge, the like, I'm going to kiss his face with an uppercut. Because I feel like that's a good example of kind of a long, hand-drawn animated sequence in the video.
So this is the kissing scene, if you guys remember, where she's like punching him and then kissing him. So literally just drew it frame by frame, and then exported it. You export it as a PNG sequence here. You use this and you put it into a folder, and then you bring it into After Effects as a PNG sequence. I'm not gonna actually do it. And then you can add it in to the video along with the other layers. So this is the PNG sequence, which then if I twirl this down, you can see I have a time remap tool on it. You get this by clicking, you double click, and then you go to time and you click enable time remapping. So PNG sequence is just all the frames that I drew in Procreate lined up in a sequence in a folder. It brings it into After Effects and it just sort of plays it back. But then you can add the time remap. The time remap tool allows you to show which frame is showing at the time you're at. Like you're at this section here or this frame here. You can scroll through and you can literally change what part of the animation it's showing at that time. So that gave me a lot of control because, this part of the video actually repeated twice. She sings it first in the bridge more slow and then she sings it fast again. So I had to retime it 2 times based on that, but I didn't want to actually animate it twice. So this gave me the control to make it kind of oscillate between the first 2 opening frames to give that line boil effect. The actual animation happens. So you can see I stopped time remapping here and I just sort of let the animation play out. And then it starts oscillating now between 2 different frames and I'm using the time remap tool. I actually didn't clip the gel pen texture onto this one in Procreate because it was just so many frames. So I just added it in After Effects so I can actually turn it off and you'll see if I turn it off, it should go away. I actually clipped it on so I can actually turn it off and the whole layer becomes invisible because this is the way it looked in Procreate. But then I took the gel pen texture and I did a track matte. So I put it below this layer here, below the PNG sequence. Then I drag this little pick whip to it and that creates a track matte where it's mapped to the pixels of the layer above. So this inserted image is the gel pen texture. Let me see if I can get rid of that so you can see. It's the gel pen texture overlaid on top. So that's just something, I did that for a couple times if there was like a big chunk of animation that I didn't feel like clipping to each frame of the animation in Procreate. I just put it on in After Effects later. And here she is punching him out. I have it split into 2 because after I just kind of had them going back and forth with the kissing, I then resume with the punching animation from the same PNG sequence, but I think I cut it to make it easier to time. So it's very similar to animating the text. It's just instead of just a static text image from Procreate, you have this whole chunk of animation that you're working with.
So now that you've seen one hand-drawn sequence in the video, I thought I would bring up another one, which I animated a little bit differently. So the next one I'm going to show you is the therapist scene, where the clipboard, she's writing on the clipboard, she's like, I am my father's daughter, so maybe I could fix him. So for this one, I did something a little bit different in that I was a little bit stuck on how to animate the camera moving. I really liked that idea of having it start with the clipboard and then turning around and be the therapist. But every time I tried to storyboard it, I just couldn't figure out how to get the angles right. So what I ended up doing was modeling it a little, like really rudimentary, like don't get too excited, but modeling it in Cinema 4D, which I was taking a class on at the time, doing a very basic, just basic polygon shape, and then animating it in the program, exporting that as a PNG sequence, bringing that into Procreate, and then tracing over it in the gel pen. Another part of the video that really deviated from the just text popping on screen is the break his heart, stitch it up, and that's probably my favorite section of the video, just because I like when I came up with the idea of having the paper like break in 2 and then come back together, I was like really excited about that idea, but I didn't quite know how I was going to execute it just because I knew I wanted the two pieces of paper to be animated in After Effects because I wanted to have the like wiggle effect on them. So I couldn't just do a PNG sequence in Procreate. Like I couldn't just draw it out, make them go far apart in Procreate and then stitch back together, because that wasn't going to work with how I was planning on animating the paper. So I ended up having to do the animation more in After Effects with a path layer.
Here is a rough storyboard for it. So this was like what I knew I wanted to get to do, but I couldn't do it in Procreate. I wanted it to be done in After Effects because I wanted the different rips of paper to be moving independently, and that just was not going to work by animating it in Procreate. So I created the assets for it here. So here we have all the different pieces of it that then later I brought into the program. So we have just this heart on a paper, I wanna, and I have to do everything twice because of the boiling lines. Then we have the two halves. If I get rid of the back here, you can see that they're two. So I showed you a little bit about it in Procreate. And then here you can see the layers that I showed you in Procreate. We got the text layers. Basically, it starts with, it's just normal. Like we got the I wanna and the heart and everything. And then those layers end. So you can see they cut off here and then new things take their place that look the same but are a little different. You actually can kind of see the cut here if you are zoomed out like this. You can see how the rings of the journal disappear because it's a different asset completely, which is there's the break his heart text, which is underneath and appears as the two pages separate. And then on top of them is this pages comp. So this is the 2 pages half. So it's all done in a different comp. And if I open this up, so this is the composition where I animated the 2 pages tearing apart and then coming back together. I have the half page right and half page left. So they're just 2 different compositions. And then on them is the heart and the like I wanna text. And then they're animated using position keyframes and rotation keyframes, making them, pull apart, rotate a little bit back and forth, and come back together. And then on top of them is the stitch animation here and the connecting lines going between and then the stitch at the top. So the way I did that was I used a path shape. So basically to create that, you click this pen tool button in the corner and you set the stroke to whatever you want, whatever color you want. I obviously use this blue color, but for this example, I'm just gonna use a different one. So you kind of create your path that you want. So this is just an example, but then you go to the shape layer that you just created, into contents. Under that, you go to shape. Under that, you go to path. And then here you can click this stopwatch and that creates a keyframe. Go, forward or back in your timeline. And then you can edit these Bezier handles. You can pull them, you can drag them around. You can make them, flat, whatever you want. And then that will create another keyframe and then the animation will happen in between. So you kind of have to have a good idea of like how you want the animation to happen and try to be strategic about where you're putting the points and where they're moving and stuff. So it can be a little challenging to animate this way. And honestly, I was kind of a bit of a beginner when I did this, so I feel like it doesn't look super smooth. But you can see the thread goes in, and then that thread at the bottom is one layer. So that's called thread bottom, which is right here. So if I, get rid of it, it goes away. And I can make it back and you can see the path and the keyframes that I created for that. So you can see like when it, pulls tight here, there's a bunch of keyframes here. Zoom in. You can see their keyframe where they're all curved like that. Go forward a few frames, keyframe where they're all straight, and then the computer did the in-between part here. And then same here where keyframe straight and they're pulled together like that. And then if you go forward, they get all curvy again, and that is this keyframe here representing that final pose. And so that's the same for the top thread here. I've made them 2 because there's this big gap in the middle where the stitch part is. So for the middle thread, there's 2 different parts. There's the stitch right, stitch left. Those are just the same idea. It's the shape path layer, but just sort of, little gaps that I made. So I just literally took the pen tool and like went click, 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 click to create this stitch shape here, but made sure to have little pauses in between. And then for the threads in the middle, that is these lines here called connecting lines. So this is actually the very bottom layer, all the way at the bottom, because it's below the 2 half pages. You see, if I turn that off, that will go away. Turn it back on, go into the thing. So the way I did this was I took the pen tool, drew these lines going like from place to place where I wanted them. And if I, turn off the pages, you can see that it's just one continuous line that's going back and forth. So I created the path, then you click add, and you click add trim paths. So trim paths creates this effect here, which will create a way for you to control the line's start and finish time, like as it appears on screen. So at this keyframe, it's at 0 and 0. So that means none of it's on screen. And then if you go forward, it's at all the way at the end keyframe here. I have it at, 100 for the end. So, if you can slide this, it goes up and down. So yeah, then I just kind of timed it out so that it looked good with the music and with everything else that's appearing on, like all these different stitch parts. So it kind of just making everything work in tandem together. So like this comes on, when that hits that, this starts to go up, and then the connecting lines appear, and as they appear, controlling, how these lines were appearing, and they're all on separate layers. And then it was just a matter of bringing these 2 pages together and controlling these lines, making them get straight as they came to snap together to create this sort of like thread moving, pulling it.
Another thing that was really fun with this video is, since I was experimenting with photo textures and using like real life elements and kind of blending them into the animation, I actually did take my own photographs a couple times. And one of those sequences where I used my own pictures was the part where the paper crumples up. I just couldn't find any like good source images on any like image place that I use of like paper crumpling up in sequence. So I ended up just taking out my phone and taking a piece of notebook paper and crumpling up a piece of paper, and then sort of in Procreate adding the gel pen text onto the crumpled up piece of paper. So I'm just gonna pop on screen. These are the original photos of the paper that I took, and then how they ended up in the final product. So another part of the video that was sort of similar is the I miss the way he kisses thing. So I knew I wanted like lips kind of like appearing on the page as if someone was kissing the page, but I couldn't really find any images either online of like lips like slowly appearing. So I just literally applied some lipstick to my own mouth and just kissed my sketchbook a bunch of times. And a bunch of people probably thought it was weird because my sketchbook for a while just had like lots of lipstick marks all over it and like various stages, like like going onto the paper at different like amounts. And then I just like photoshopped the best ones into like the 3 different kiss marks on the paper. So I hope all that helped you guys understand how I created this video from start to finish, all the different moving parts. As you can see, there was a lot. It was a long process, and it really means a lot to me that so many people watched it and liked it. When I was working on it for 10 months, I had no idea if it was going to get any views at all. So it really means a lot to me that it did really well on TikTok and that people are still watching it there and on YouTube as well. I hope this video helped you if you want to create your own lyric videos or other After Effects projects. And definitely subscribe to my channel if you want to see what I do next.